Welcome everyone to today's live stream, episode 2 of our Baldur's Gate 3 Bard gameplay series. I'm Commander Jorval and I want to thank you all for coming along on our journey today. So, on some admin notes here, first I just want to say a big, massive shout out to everyone who has shown their support over the past couple of weeks. The channel has experienced unprecedented growth for me, and it was simply a shock to me to see all of that appear over the past couple of weeks. So just from me personally, as a content creator, I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. Every bit of that is very, very much appreciated. So thank you very much. I see we have a lot of viewers here today, and again, thank you for that. The chat is going to be a little bit hard for me to keep up with while I'm going through the live stream, so I apologize for that. When we get into specific situations, some of your questions and things like that may not be answered as quickly as I can, and also there may be times where I'm just not able to answer something just due to the time it might take to answer it in the location that we're in or something like that. But I will certainly try my best. It's something, again, new to having more questions to be able to react to than I'm used to. So I will try and adapt, but bear with me. But again, I certainly appreciate it. One last admin note. As I mentioned when I started this series, the Bard series is starting. Well, it started with about 4 weeks left before the full release of the game. And that means that when you normally have 17 or 18 weeks for a live stream playthrough, it is simply not going to all happen before the full access version releases. So what I've decided to do, however, is because the Bard class is so interesting and is so different from the previous more martial classes that I have played, I'm going to continue this live stream. So what I'm going to do is do my best to do an additional live stream on Saturdays. So you will have a live stream on Saturday for the patch 9 early access version of this Bard playthrough, and then you can come back if you'd like on Sunday for a playthrough of the full version of the game using a brand new character that I'm going to be creating at that time. That Saturday live stream is, I hope I can be consistent with it. My Saturdays are very, very busy with a lot of things that happen, especially with work, but hopefully I will be able to be consistent enough with it that I can keep it going and let everybody see. I've been getting a lot of Bard specific questions just because they don't see this class very often, and I think having a full playthrough to showcase the abilities would be very helpful. So stay tuned to that as we get closer to the full release date, and you will get more updates on that. So I think that's it for the admin notes. Oh, one last thing. Again, because my house is currently completely demolished and under construction, I just had the internet changed over today. Everything seems to be working good. The company assured me that everything was still working okay. If something does happen, though, because of the extremely strange setup that I have going here to try and get streaming working in a demolished house, I apologize. We'll just have to kind of bear with it as we go. So I think that's it. So from a recap, last week was very interesting for a lot of you in that you got to see a lot more in-depth character creation. There is simply so much that goes into playing a main character that the character creation can be a very important aspect to it in early access. Now, as we've just been discussing in chat, there's going to be multiple changes in the full access version of the game concerning race selections and class selections, and those pure number distributions that I spent so much time on are going to become a little easier to work around and a little less relevant. So You'll see that in the full version, we'll probably end up spending a little less time in character creation than we did in the early access live streams. But we did spend a lot of time on that, so I appreciate you hanging with me on that and seeing it through. We did end up completing the prologue, and we ended up on the Ravaged Beach, and that's where we're going to start today. We defeated Commander Zulk, we picked up the Everburn Blade, and we left the prologue at that point without finishing off the other two Cambions that showed up. So we're going to go ahead and just jump right back in to the Ravaged Beach. And the plan today is to fill out our party somewhat temporarily and with some members in it. We will be changing one of those members out and then make our way through the overgrown ruins and unlock a character NPC that will be in our camp, who can be very, very useful. So here we are, right where we left off on the shore of the Ravaged Beach. And the first thing that we're going to do is, like I had mentioned in the prologue, there's no opportunity to clear out your inventory when you're in the prologue. Anything you pick up, you have to carry with you. There's simply no other way to get rid of it unless you just drop it on the ground. So we're going to open up our inventory screen. And for instance, the supply pack with camp supplies. Camp supplies you do not need to carry on you, unlike the tabletop version of the game. Here in the video game, we can send these to our camp, and they will end up in a traveler's chest and available for us to use anytime that we take a long rest. We'll get a warning that will pop up telling us that we don't have adequate camp supplies on us to take a long rest, but then you can leave and go to camp and then pick your camp supplies up before you actually click on your sleeping bag to take a rest. So for instance, this supply pack is taking 2 pounds of weight. We can now send that to our camp, and it lowers our carry weight. And we can do that with everything that we simply don't need to carry anymore. And as we mentioned, we're going to keep the mines in jars. We don't have a use for them in early access, but again, those you can all send to your camp. Then we have these other items like hollow shells, mucoid shells, belladonna bundles, and murgrass bundles. There's a new mechanic being introduced in the full version around crafting. And you can craft potions and elixirs and that sort of stuff using ingredients, and these items can possibly be used for that type of crafting later on. So if you're playing early access now, get in the habit of searching for those things and then saving them by just sending them off to camp. And that way you might have access to them later on for crafting purposes. So at that point, I think that frees up everything that we need. We're going to keep the Scroll of Revivify on us just in case, and everything else we're going to hold on to for now. And we're simply going to start looking around the shore here. And yes, and also concerning the camp supplies, you'll see later on in early access, your traveler's chest is entirely filled with everything and there's no order to it. The full version also adds things like a key ring, which is basically an inventory that all the keys that you picked up go into. It adds a food sack where all of your camp supplies go into, so things are much easier to find and sort through as opposed to just having them all stuck in one camp chest. So we're just walking around, and again, we're kind of opening up our mini-map over here. And just walking around and kind of moving our mouse around and seeing what else there is out here. Now you can see there's clamshells, and those, who knows? You don't know if those are going to be part of crafting recipes or anything like that in the future. So if you want to pick them up, you certainly can, but you don't have to. So we're going to go over here and search the Mangled Fisher. And we have a fish here. Now again, camp supplies, so what you can do, instead of even putting this in your inventory, you can just right click on it here and send it directly to camp. And you're going to see me do that quite a bit. throughout the playthrough. And I think we now also have an idea what bottles are used for. I think you're probably going to need to pick up bottles to be able to use in your crafting to create potions and that sort of stuff. In the early access, we had just been leaving them around, but now you probably want to save bottles. But we'll see when the full access version releases exactly what that entails. And yes, they did say that in the prologue, there's about 20% more content in the prologue in Act 1. And yes, that Commander Zalk, that fight is probably going to be weighted heavily in the favor of not being able to obtain the Everburn Blade. But we'll see again when that comes out. So, Shadowheart is now here on the ground. We have an option to talk to her. Two options here, to either wake her up or to reach for the artifact. So, it depends on how you want your character relations to go throughout your playthrough as to which way you want to go. I've mentioned before that you can get approval and disapproval from your NPC companions based on the choices you make. If you reach for the artifact, she's going to wake up and find you trying to reach for it, and you're going to get some disapproval. If you don't mind that disapproval, then you can feel free to do it. I'm just going to wake her up.
You're alive. I'm alive. How is this possible? The Divine tend to keep their interventions close to the chest. Though, I suppose it's not impossible. No, I don't recognize this place. But anything's an improvement on where we just came from. First things first, we need supplies, shelter, and most of all, a healer. We might have escaped, but we still have these little monsters in our heads. We need each other, and we both know what's at stake. I can't think of better company. One thing, just before we go. I wanted to thank you again for freeing me. It would have been all too easy for you to run right past my pod, but you didn't. I'll remember that. Lead the way.
And again, you saw just there the approval-disapproval mechanic, and how that's going to play out. You can look at the character sheets, and you can see where the approval-disapproval bar is for other characters related to you. In the past games, and I have no reason to think it's going to be any different, in the past games, the higher this approval, the more it unlocks specific companion-related quests that help tie them better to your party. So that approval staying low might not ever get those companion-type quests. Getting it up to a higher level probably will. So, for Shadowheart, she joined our group, and she has enough to level up, so we're going to quickly go through the level up here. And have I decided if this is a good, neutral, or probably not evil playthrough? That's a very interesting question. I have always played tabletop and video games as either a good or neutral playthrough. I have not really ventured much into the evil style of playthroughs. So I'm going to have a choice, however, when I get to the full version based on the race and class I'm going to pick. Because there is an excellent option to be able to play that character as a chaotic version of either good, neutral, or evil, or just an evil version of any of those as well. So I'll kind of decide then, but for now, this one's going to be the same as normal, neutral, or good. So for a level up for the cleric, it's a lot of the same things as we saw for the level up for the bard. We unlocked another level 1 spell slot. We also unlocked Channel Divinity, which means that we now have Turn Undead available to us. That is the classic tabletop bread and butter skill for a cleric, and we are probably going to be able to use that today. So we'll see how that goes. So Shadowheart is a trickery domain cleric, which is their subclass, which means from level 1 to level 2, she now gets Invoke Duplicity, which is she gets to summon an illusion within a 9-meter radius that distracts enemies, and your allies receive advantage on attack rolls against a creature if the attacker and the creature are within 3 meters of the illusion. So what you want to do is take your melee character, take them up, get them into a fight, and then cast Invoke Duplicity right next to them, so that they're both right next to the image, and that will distract the enemy and give your melee character advantage on the saving throw. So for prepared spells here, these, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time going through the spells here because I've done these on previous playthroughs, and we're going to have a lot to go through, especially with the comments, but the bread and butter offensive spell for clerics is Guiding Bolt. It's upcastable, meaning you can cast it at higher levels to get more damage out of it. It's a 4d6 radiant damage. Not many enemies are resistant to radiant damage. You can cast it for 18 meters away, and you get a condition if it hits called Guiding Bolt, which gives any attacking party member advantage against that character for 2 turns, or that enemy for 2 turns. So you definitely want to keep Guiding Bolt in your spell bag. Healing Word we've talked about with the Bard, definitely a bonus here for them. Then we have Bane and Bless, the opposites of each other. Bane inflicts a penalty to attack rolls and saving throws on an enemy group of characters. Bless gives a 1d4 bonus to attack rolls and saving throws to friendly party members. So both very, very useful. I tend to get rid of Create or Destroy Water early on because I don't need it, and we're going to have a spell or a staff that's going to help us overcome that, and add in Shield of Faith. And I'm going to keep both Bane and Bless for now, but I'll probably change out Bane for Cure Wounds later on. Shield of Faith gives you a straight 2 bonus to your armor class, and it is a concentration spell just like Bane and Bless are. However, that +2 bonus is a 10% increase in the ability to avoid melee hits, so it can be pretty powerful for your frontline melee characters. So that's it you have for your clerics, so we're just going to go ahead and accept that. Okay, so now you also have the option with another person in your permanent party. This is also different from the prologue, to be able to bring up an inventory screen for your entire party. And now you can swap things back and forth between characters. And there's a camp supply tutorial here. Again, I'm going to go through that for you so you don't have to worry about it. But you can swap items back and forth between characters by clicking and dragging them. You can send things to camp from individual inventories. And I'm just going to spend just a second here cleaning up my inventory again. And I think that should be good. Now, clerics in tabletop and historically have favored blunt weapons. That is no longer a die-hard thing anymore from tabletop. It hasn't been since before 5th edition, I believe. But she comes with a mace, which is 1d6 plus 1, so if you encounter any weapons to boost that up, then above a 1d6, then you can obviously swap that out. She does come with medium armor with a chain shirt. She is proficient with medium, light, and shields with all simple weapons, but no martial weapons. So there's no longbows or, larger, more heavy-duty weapons and that sort of stuff. She's simply not proficient in them. So it's simple weapons only. So she does have light crossbows and short bows that she can use. So here we need to give her a ranged weapon as well, so I'm just going to give her a short bow.
There is work to do.
And you can see that proficiency is unlocked for both. Okay, so now we're just going to keep exploring. We're going to hold the Alt key and kind of look around here. Head over toward the shore over here and just watching our mini-map and unlocking any of the dark areas of the map. And kind of moving our mouse around in various locations just to see if there's anything sitting on the ground that we can open up or that we can look at. So we're going to move over here and search this barrel. And some more camp supplies. So again, I'm going to send those directly to camp. And water. There's no use for water in early access except as a throwable item that you can throw on fire. But again, that might be one more type of crafting supply in the full version of the game. So don't overlook those things. And you can see holding Alt, there's some myrgrass over here that we can pick up. And with those, you'll see more of that as we go along here, and I'll show you. You can't right-click on those and select to send them directly to your camp. You have to left-click on them to pick them up, and then once they're in your inventory, then you can send them to camp. So, mugs, plates, knives, forks, I'm not going to take.
Not that it mattered in the end.
But there are some high-value versions of silverware and stuff that you will see much later on in early access that you might want to pick up so you can sell them later. So, more camp supplies. And this is what one of the comments was earlier. You're going to find a lot of camp supplies. The early access is just full of them. So, this really means that you can take as many long rests as you want. You're probably never going to run out of camp supplies. So, I tend to not do that. I tend to utilize my long rests only when I need them because of spell slots or ability recharges, but you'll see that as we go along as well. So here, you're going to see these books a lot. If there's a red marker down here, it simply means that there's another page that you can scroll through in the book. So if you see that, don't forget to go to the next page and read. A lot of these, or most of these, are simply going to be lore, and they're always, you know, really interesting to read. However, there are some books in certain locations that you will definitely want to read because they will unlock the ability to do certain things or take certain actions later on in the game. So don't overlook books that you find. I tend to always pick them up for their carry weight, which is half a pound. They're worth a decent amount of gold. So that's 28 gold per pound. So if you don't want to, you know, keep them with you or store them, then you can always, you know, sell them later on. So here we have a perfumed letter, and I'm going to read that here. And when you read this, it's talking about a couple, Sai and Anna. This is a letter from Anna to Sai, who's now obviously dead, laying on the ground, about going to Baldur's Gate. And this is one of those things that picking up this letter, maybe in the full version of the game, you will meet Anna at some point, and you can then bring closure to her, and maybe that will open up a reward or another quest or something like that. You're going to see a lot of these things in the early access that might not have anything, any conclusion to them in early access, but don't overlook them when it comes to the full version. So you're going to see me saying that a lot. Don't overlook something just because there's no use for it in early access. So here you can see we can pick up the myrgrass, but we can't send it directly to camp. So to send myrgrass to camp, you're going to have to pick it up, and then you're going to have to go into your inventory at some later time and send it to camp. So you'll see me do that a lot. I will just walk around, search a bunch of objects, and then at some point I will take them all and send them to camp all at one time. So now we see two items here which in tabletop are extraordinarily useful. In the video game here, trap disarm toolkits, very useful. They do exactly what it says on the tin. They are meant to disarm traps, so you need to pick those up. Rope, there isn't any use for in early access, and I do not know how or if Larian Studios is going to implement the utilization of rope in the full version of the game. Rope in tabletop is just one of those things that has infinite possibilities for it. However, there hasn't been an instance in early access where you can walk up to something and say, put a rope here to climb up something, or to tie a rope here and throw it across an area to somebody on the other side to create a rope bridge or anything like that. So I'm anxious to see what Larian's going to do with it, but for now I'm not going to be picking them up. Thieves' Tools, again, exactly what it says it does. It helps you unlock things. Unlock lockpick, doors, locks, things like that, and chests. And these are obviously what are needed to do that. So if you don't have any Thieves' Tools, you're not going to be able to perform that option. It does. Yeah, rope mechanics is not something that I'm holding out, against all hope for. But I might expect that you might get to an area where if you have a rope in your pack and there's a deep cliff, you may be able to walk up to a stake that's sitting on the ground and tie your rope to it. And then that rope appears in the game and you're able to climb down it or something like that. That seems like a fairly easy implementation, but you're correct. You certainly can't implement the entire multiple ways you can utilize a rope in tabletop inside a game like this. It's just impossible. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, that's pretty funny. So we are going to come up to an ancient door here, and this, you can see, this is our first opportunity to deal with a lockpick. You have the icon that changes to a lock, and now when you right-click, the lockpick option appears. Now, we're not going to go inside this door here. I know what this door leads to, but you can see that we also opened up the Overgrown Ruins fast travel point. This leads into the chapel. It actually, to be more precise, is the intended way you're supposed to lead out of the chapel when you've completed it. The DC, or difficulty check for this, is, it's been 20 in the previous patches, so it's incredibly high. So being able to pick your way in is pretty hard, and we've got another way that we're going to get into the chapel. There are, just like you would expect, there are multiple ways to get into any particular area in the game, and that chapel is one of them. So we're going to make our way up here, and you can see that we have a dead commoner here, but we also have a couple of Intellect Devourers that are shown up on our mini-map, and they are yellow, meaning they are non-hostile right now. So we're going to just walk up here.
More of those wretched things.
And they both are going to move away into this area farther down and disappear from our line of sight. So we're going to do a little more searching here. Holding Alt, you can see we have more commoners around here to search for some gold. Just looking over here and seeing what options that we have. And we have another commoner down here, so we're going to head this way and open up this part of the mini-map. And there's a dagger. And again, heading down this way, another bottle that we can send to camp, and some more camp supplies, both of which we can just send to camp. Holding Alt, nothing else seems to show up down here. So we're going to make our way back up. And now you can see on our mini-map, the Intellect Devourers, the icons are now red, which means they are going to be hostile the instant that we are detected. So we're going to go into hide here, and we're going to slowly make our way into this area. And we're again going to take the high ground here. So we're going to move up here, staying out of the detection cones for the Intellect Devourers. And we're going to now break our group, and we're going to move our Bard a bit farther out here. And we're going to watch this detection cone, and you can see how far it reaches. So we can still move up a bit farther here.
Cloak and dagger, my
And we're going to move Shadowheart up here as well. So now we're going to get to see a little bit more of how the Bardic Inspiration works. In the prologue, we could use Bardic Inspiration, and we did on our characters, but you can't get the most usage out of it because you're not able to pull up the reactions screen while you're in the prologue. And there are a couple of ways to get to the reaction screen. First, if you bring up your inventory, up here at the top, there's a reactions button. Okay, so right now there are no available reactions for Shadowheart or for myself. You can also hit the L key on mouse and keyboard and it will bring up that same reactions screen. This is where your Bardic Inspirations are going to go, and we'll be able to see how much more impactful Bardic Inspiration can be when we get into this fight. So I'm going to move my Bard up just a little bit more here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get myself into range to make an attack on the nearest Intellect Devourer. Now there are 3 of them. One's patrolling around. There's another one here and another one here. I'm going to move myself all the way out here and make a ranged attack on this one. To do that, I'm going to wait until this Intellect Devourer has moved into a position where I can walk up there safely. So as soon as it turns around and walks away, I'm going to move out here.
What path lies before me?
And I'm going to trigger a ranged attack here. Okay?
Better stay back.
So, as you can see, that put me into combat. I rolled very well on initiative, so I am going first. And the enemy is surprised. So, if you examine the enemy, you can see they have a condition of surprised that says they cannot take any actions or reactions for a full turn. So basically, I have a free combat round here that I can do what I will. And as part of that, I think these enemies are fairly straightforward here, but I would like to illustrate some of the spells again that we've run into, or that we've utilized here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cast Fairy Fire down here, and you can see when I cast Fairy Fire, I can get any 2 of them here. And Fairy Fire, again, is a dexterity save. If I examine the Intellect Devourer, their dexterity is 14, so that's +2. So they're going to have a better than average chance of avoiding Fairy Fire. And this is going to be concentration, so I'm going to have to keep concentrating on this spell to keep it active as we go. But I want to illustrate, hopefully one of them will fail it, because I want to illustrate more of what Fairy Fire does. So I'm going to cast it here. Okay, so one of them saved. This one here did not save. For the next 10 turns, they're enveloped with Fairy Fire. And now if you examine them, you can see that Fairy Fire says that incoming attacks have advantage. So this Intellect Devourer here is going to be in a serious world of hurt when it comes to attack rolls later on. So now I know that this one's at a severe disadvantage. So I'm not going to focus my ranged attacks as much here because I know it's going to be really open to melee attacks from Shadowheart a little bit later. So now I have my bonus action, and for that I can use Bardic Inspiration. Now I'm going to inspire Shadowheart here. Okay. And I'm going to move Shadowheart up here, and I'm going to put her in turn-based mode. The reason for that is simply so I have more control over what she's able to do, and that if there's Bardic Inspiration is not timed, which is different than the tabletop version. But if you give somebody a status effect and it's based on turns, you can put them into forced turn-based mode so that it doesn't run out before they get into combat, because you can see right now she's not in combat. So now she has Bardic Inspiration, and you can see these icons that popped up down here in the corner. The first is the Bardic roll. Now, when I cast Bardic Inspiration on her, that gave her what's called a Bardic die. That die is 1 dice, a 1 6-sided die that she gets to roll in one of 2 situations. She either gets to roll it as a Bardic attack, in which she will get a 1d6 bonus to her very next attack roll, or Bardic defense, which is if she gets inflicted with something that she has a chance to make a saving throw against, then she has a 1d6 bonus on that saving throw. This does not, to be very clear, this does not mean that you have a 1d6 bonus to your armor class, so you're not able to avoid attacks any better. However, you are better able to avoid damaging status effects from spells or weapons that can impart effects, or attacks that can give you effects, and that sort of stuff. So this icon here, you can click it to toggle it on and off. What this means is now that it's off, she's never going to use that Bardic Inspiration until I turn it back on. Okay. There is, however, a better way to do this, and that is to now bring up the reaction screen. So now you can see that when she has this screen, or Bardic Inspiration, Bardic Attack and Bardic Defense are both here and available, and there's this checkbox over here for Ask. What this is going to do is every opportunity that you have to make an attack, it's going to ask you if you want to use your Bardic Inspiration to boost your attack roll. That's very important, because in the screen that pops up, you'll see it's going to give you some very useful information about your attack roll. It's also going to ask you if you want to use it on defense. So if you get hit with something and you have to make a saving throw, it's going to ask you, do you want to use your Bardic Inspiration in defense of this or not? So I would always put these to ask, just to give you the most control over how to use them. But you can always just toggle them on and off here, as long as you uncheck these. If you check these, it doesn't matter whether you've toggled them on or off here. But if they're unchecked, you can always turn them both on or off here. Otherwise, if they're on, it's going to use the first it encounters automatically. So if you make an attack, it's going to automatically use it on that attack. If you get hit by something that makes us have you do a saving throw, it's going to automatically use it to help that saving throw. So it's always better to have it ask you if you want to use it or not. Okay. So now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get myself into combat with Shadowheart. And I'm going to do that by casting Guiding Bolt here at this Intellect Devourer. Okay, and this is what I mean by the Ask checkbox in the reaction. It tells you a lot of information here that's very important. So it says that Shadowheart needs a 7 to hit the Intellect Devourer. I rolled a 26. Okay, so I rolled very, very well. I don't need the extra 1d6 bonus on my attack roll to hit the Intellect Devourer. So I'm not going to use it. That lets me save it for a time when I actually do need to use it in my benefit. Okay? And that damage knocked that one out completely, and it brought Shadowheart into combat. And you can see I still have a Bardic Inspiration available to me. That's one of the things that is very true to tabletop, and that you are able to decide when and how you want to use that Bardic Inspiration while you're in a conversation or while you are in a combat scenario to help you get a leg up on the scenario. So I'm really glad to see Larian has implemented Bardic Inspiration that way. It's a very, very good way of doing it. So this button lets me know that the character that I've selected, which is Shadowheart, is not it's not their current turn, so you can just click here. And now I'm out of turn, so I'm just going to end my turn here. And as I said, those two are now, their first turn is they were surprised, so they were not able to do anything. So now this turn I get another free attack, and they're going to be free to move afterward. So again, this one's affected by Fairy Fire. I'm not going to concentrate on it very much. This one, if you look up at the top, you can see that I'm gaining a +2 to hit because of high ground, but I'm also gaining disadvantage because the target is outside the normal range of this ranged weapon. You can see that ranged area here. There is some leeway. Sometimes slightly in or out can be a little troublesome, but this one you can see it's still outside normal range. So with disadvantage, it's going to roll 2 dice, and it's going to pick the lesser of the 2 to see if I make it to hit here. Okay, so I did hit and cause 4 damage. Now, if you open up your window down here, you can see that I used a ranged attack on the Intellect Devourer. The Intellect Devourer was hit for 4 piercing damage. And you can see that it lists out all of the rolls that happened completely in the background to be able to calculate that hit and damage. So I rolled an 8 on disadvantage. That was the lesser of the 2 die rolls. It added +2 for proficiency, it added +2 for high ground, +2 for dexterity modifier for a 2-hit roll of 14. Then that hits because it's above the Intellect Devourer's armor class of 7, so if that's equal to or higher than that number, it hits. It rolled for damage, got a 2 roll, +2 for dexterity, and that's where the 4 came from. So if you have no familiarity with D&D at all, opening up this window and hovering over any of the underlined options in this window will help explain exactly what happened to you, or exactly what happened to an enemy, so you can better figure out how to gain more modifiers to your advantage. Okay? So now again, I still have a bonus action, and there's nothing that I need to do with it here. I'm going to keep up on the high ground because that +2 modifier is so important. And now Shadowheart is here. And for Shadowheart, most of the stuff that we're going to have access to here is not going to be very beneficial. She has Sacred Flame cantrip, which means that she can cast this. It's a cantrip. It doesn't use a spell slot, so she can cast it over and over and over again. The only one she can really cast it on is this Intellect Devourer here. And even though it's occupied by, or it's afflicted with Fairy Fire, I think I'm just going to utilize that damage anyway. Why not? Okay, so it saved against that cantrip, so it took no damage at all. And again, you'll be able to see that the Intellect Devourer succeeded on its saving throw. The DC was 8 + 3 + 2 with a 15. It rolled for a 13 to hit. It rolled a 15 plus its Dex modifier for 17. So that's why it saved. So again, a lot of information here in the window to explain what's happening. It's very disheartening to open that up and see that you rolled a 1 when you missed on something, but it'll allow you to do that. So this Intellect Devourer is going to dash to try and get in range. The other one's going to dash as well and try and get into range. Now, dash is important because for Intellect Devourers and for most characters, dash is an action, which means that if they dash toward you, even if they get right next to you, they're not going to be able to melee attack you because they've already used their action. So keep that in mind when you're maintaining distance away from something. You can find out how much movement they have, 9 meters. You can judge how far away you are from it. So 20 meters here, so I could move within another 10 meters of it up to here.
Don't waste a step.
And it's not going to be able to reach me in a single movement turn. So it's going to have to dash, and even when it gets close to me, it's not going to be able to attack. So that's very, very helpful, is to examine your enemies, find out what their movement speed is, and find out whether or not they can reach you with a melee attack if that's all they have available to them. Okay, so here I'm going to try out something else on this one, and again I am concentrating on Fairy Fire, so I can't cast anything else to concentrate on, like Tasha's Hideous Laughter, because that would remove Fairy Fire here, but I can cast Vicious Mockery, which is going to give them disadvantage on their attack roll if they fail a Wisdom save, and their Wisdom save is an 11, so they're getting no bonuses to their Wisdom save here. So I'm going to cast Vicious Mockery here. And in the future, I will go silent before I do that, because the dialogue lines that they use to mock the enemies are just hilarious. They're just... yeah, they're just awesome. So, but for now, like I say, I cast Vicious Mockery on them, so now if I examine them, you can see that they have disadvantage on their next attack roll, and I have advantage against them for the next 8 turns. So when it moves up here and gets close to Shadowheart,
Can't give up.
because I am real close, yeah, I'm within the attack range of it when it gets close. So when it moves up here, its attack roll on Shadowheart is going to be at disadvantage. So I'm going to try and just cast a Firebolt cantrip, and I'm wondering why. Okay, that's... oh! I know why. That's because of her subclass. I was like, why does she have the that cantrip? I'm going to cast the Firebolt cantrip here. And again, pops up the window. I need a 7 to hit. I rolled a 14, so I don't need to use my Bardic attack here. Okay, and now I'm going to end my turn.
Sometimes the only way out is through.
Yes, Ganny, an advantage and disadvantage are both so very important in both tabletop and in this game. Anything that gives you advantage or imparts disadvantage, those are huge benefits. So the more you can take advantage of those, the better off you are. So here we don't really have much to do, and I'm kind of, just to give you a heads up, I'm dragging this combat out to explain more the basics of this. Some of you are much more experienced in D&D than others. I'm just using this combat to help explain how some of this works. So I know this may drag on a little bit long for some of you, but for some of you who are very interested in the game that's coming out but have no experience with how D&D works, this will give you an idea about how some of the mechanics work and what some of the options are available for you. So 2 hit points left on this one, 1 hit point left on this. I think I'm just going to try Dissonant Whispers now. This is not, again, going to take full advantage of it because it's going to kill straight out whoever it hits if they fail a Wisdom saving throw. We'll see more about Dissonant Whispers later on. Okay, so that one's done. So I'm going to end turn, and we'll be talking about Flourish later on. And then here for Shadowheart, this is something else that I wanted to illustrate with this. Right now, I'm doing a ranged attack. You can see that's what my cursor says, but if you look up at the top, I'm getting advantage from Fairy Fire, but I'm getting disadvantage because the target is too close. Now, what that means is that when you get within melee distance of a target, that target becomes threatened. And that, in this case, actually, it's not threatened because they don't have the condition. Oh, yes, it is. So, when you get within melee range of a character, you're both threatened. And at that point, that's going to limit some of the actions you can take and can't take, or give you penalties to doing certain actions. So, if you're right up next to somebody, you probably aren't going to be able to draw your bow and shoot it at somebody who's standing right next to you very easily. So it's going to give you disadvantage on that. So if I swap to a melee attack, you can see that now up at the top, the disadvantage goes away. So if you look at the top and bottom up there, it's basically, I'm not going to gain advantage because it's going to be offset by the disadvantage. But if I do a melee attack, I'm going to have straight advantage on my roll, which is what you want. So my attack goes from 90 to 98%, and that's what gives you that bonus, is because now it's not being offset by disadvantage. So I make an attack. I needed a 7 to hit. I rolled a 22. She's rolling very, very well today. Oh boy. Impressive rolls here. So I'm not going to use her Bardic attack. I don't need it. And that ends the combat. So I'm really anxious to go back and I'm going to do the tutorials for you about the rest here. So she rolled a 19. Has a +2 proficiency bonus and then a +1 strength modifier for a roll of 22. So yeah, she's rolled very, very well here over the past little bit. So that's the basics of behind how combat works. You can, if you see a red icon, as soon as you are detected, you are going to enter into combat. If you go into hiding, you can stay out of the detection cones and manage who gets detected and who gets put into combat at which point you want. And then combat progresses turn-based, and you're able to manage your damage and your movements and your positioning to best dominate that combat so that you're able to inflict the most damage and take the least in return. So that's the gist of it. So we're going to search the Intellect Devourers here. Nothing there, and now we can drop back down onto the low ground. We're going to hold Alt as we go, and you can see there's another Intellect Devourer that's over here burning. Whenever I see something inside fire, I normally toggle my group and move a character specifically up to an area that's close. If you just click on it, they might want a path through the flames, or they may avoid the flames and be here, but because your second character is trying to stay in formation, in this diamond formation that they normally have, they'll walk into the flames as well. So be careful when you're moving your characters around in a group when you have hazardous surfaces that are on the ground. So you're better off micromanaging that movement so that you can better control where they are and where they go. So again, I'm just going to be opening up the mini-map a little bit here, looking up here and moving toward the dark areas and holding Alt periodically as I go. And you can see we now have a nobleman down here we can search. How can you see the combat rolls in the UI? Down here in the corner, if you open this up, you can leave this open if you'd like. But you can scroll to your attack roll here where it was hit for, and this section's underlined. If you click on the underline, it shows you the attack rolls that happened, as well as the damage rolls. It will do that for anything, for saving throws, for passive checks that happened in the background. It will show you all of those options here. I normally don't leave this open, but you know, it might be a good idea for me to leave that open for you all to be able to see it if you're not that experienced with it. I know how most of these things go, and I'm not interested in the rolls very much, but now that I think about it, it's probably a better idea if I leave that open down here, just so everybody can see it. And we'll refer to it periodically as we go. So now again, looking at my mini-map, we have a path that leads up this way, but we also have another path that leads up here, and there's a dead Mind Flayer up here. And they just have a spiked bulb. So again, don't forget the verticality in this game. Okay? There's verticality all over this game, and you're going to be able to use it for your benefit quite a bit. Here's one of those Nautiloid fuel tanks that was mentioned in one of the combats. Those and the fluid that come out of them, as it says, they react to heat. They are seriously explosive. you can use those to cause damage. That Intellect Devourer that was there, instead of casting Guiding Bolt on it, I could have shot a ranged attack at the Nautiloid tank and blew it up. It's a huge radius, and that explosion can burn up things like chests that are near it, and those items, if they fall into fire, may end up burning up. So you may want to be a little careful with your explosions that are able to be caused in the game, but you can certainly use them to your advantage. So now, looking at the minimap, and you can press the M key, or if you're out here, you can just click on the map icon to bring up your map. You can see that we have an option to go up here, but we came down this way through the Nautiloid. We're going to head out this direction down here, and that will end up looping us around here. So we're going to head out this way. And once I get out here, I'm again going to be taking more short movements. And there's a dead Intellect Devourer here. I'm kind of moving my mouse around the periphery here, checking to see if there are any more supplies to pick up. Okay, and I can make my way down here to the shore, again, holding Alt periodically. And there's a clamshell down here. Again, no use for it in early access, but you never know if that might be part of a crafting ingredient or something like that in the full version. So let's do some searching down here real quick. More thieves' tools. We have a loot and some camp supplies. So the loot is a musical instrument. And again, this doesn't really matter. Well, it doesn't matter as far as how you can play an instrument. What it does change is what they call the soundscape. So with this loot, you can see I chose violin at the start, so it gave me a violin, but I can swap that for the loot. And now the sounds that are made whenever I use Bardic Inspiration or whenever I cast a Bard spell are going to be different. So it allows you to customize that a little bit, which is very interesting. It's a very cool aspect of the game. So we've done most of our searching holding Alt down. Nothing else shows up down here. So we're going to make our way back up this way. And you can see we're looping back up here. So we do have a wooden trunk here that's locked. I'm going to save that trunk for now. There's a reason for that you're going to see coming up pretty quick. And again, I'm back to short movements because this is unexplored areas. So I'm just kind of moving back and forth, opening up the minimap, holding Alt, moving my mouse around out here, seeing if there's anything specific that I might miss. I'm not going to go out there yet. And now you can see on our minimap we have a yellow icon. And this is the first person that we're going to recruit into our party. So we're going to make our way up there toward Astarion. And without doing much else, we're going to recruit him into our party.
I should speak up.
Hurry. I've got one of those brain things cornered. There, in the grass. You can kill it, can't you? Like you killed the others?
Okay, two options here. I'm going to go ahead and take this option just so you can see it play out.
There. Can you see it?
Just a dumb bore. You're relieved until you see the flash of a dagger.
Okay, so you saw there was a perception check that popped up here in the back. That was a completely passive check. We'll be able to look at the roll and see how well we did after this is concluded, but we did perceive the flash of the dagger, and that changes how this cutscene plays out. If you fail that perception check, then he actually grabs you from behind and puts that dagger to your neck, and you have different options down here in this list. It's one of those things that Larian didn't have to do multiple options with that. They could have just had that be the only way this cutscene plays out, but they put a wisdom perception check in here to completely change how this interaction goes. It's just one of those little small things to kind of show how the attention to detail Larian has put into this. And yes, Rince, you're right. I'm not missing it. I'm just holding off on it for now until I recruit a couple other people to my party, because there's a reason for that. So here we're going to just start with this first option here and see if we can calm the situation down.
Don't we? I saw you on the ship, free, scuttling about. You're in league with them, aren't you? Those tentacle... Ah!
Your mind twists. You're looking out of unfamiliar eyes, prowling dark, busy streets. You try to hold the memory, but it fades to the worm. The light, the fear.
What was that? What's going on? It's those tentacled monsters. Whatever they did to us caused that link. They took you too. I saw it during whatever just happened. And to think, I was ready to decorate the ground with your innards. Apologies. A kindred spirit. My name's Astarion. I was in Baldur's Gate when those beasts snatched me.
Okay, just to elaborate very quickly inside these, there are options in here based upon your background, your class, and your race that pop up different conversation options throughout the game. And you'll see those in brackets at the start of your character. So if I'm a bard and there's a specific bard line that I can use or option I can pick, you'll see that listed up here. And if you're not a bard, it simply won't appear. One more thing that Larian has done here is how expansive the conversational options are and the impacts those have. Playing this out with this conversation here could go literally hundreds of different ways, depending upon what race you are, what class you are, and what origin story you've picked for in-character creation. One more amazing thing about the Baldur's Gate games, and it's not just in the upcoming version here, but in the past games as well, how much thought has been put into the character interactions. They're a major plot point throughout the game.
Is that so? We clearly move in different circles. So, do you know anything about these worms? Turn us into... Of course it'll turn me into a monster. What else did I expect? Although, it hasn't happened yet. If we can find an expert, someone that can control these things, there might still be time.
Now, again, with Astarion, as with all NPC origin characters, how they interact with you gives you some insight into what they're thinking. Astarion has realized that the tadpole is a source of power. Astarion wants to control that power. So if you select an option that says we need to get rid of it, he might disapprove of that. However, other party members, like Lae'zel or Shadowheart, may approve of getting rid of it. So if you select an option, that can affect the approval rating of not just the person you're talking to, but also all the other members that are in your party at the time. So if you're trying to maximize your approval with any group of characters, think carefully about how a line of dialogue is going to be interpreted by whoever you're speaking to, but also the other members of your party. So I can illustrate it here with this one.
Well, yes, of course. But first things first.
Okay, so this one is changed a little bit from patch 8. If you say that the first time, you'll get a disapproval up here from Astarion because he wants to control it. In this one, it's obviously changed a little bit. So in the full version, I'm sure it's going to change some more. But going against characters' moral codes can have approval and disapprovals through your chat dialogue options.
You know, I was ready to go this alone, but maybe sticking with the herd isn't such a bad idea. And you seem like a useful person to know. All right, I accept. Lead on.
Okay. Hey, Reinmar, thanks for joining the stream. I certainly appreciate it. Yes, I know about the subscribers. It's very, very humbling. You've seen it from the beginning, so I certainly appreciate you being here. And Rince, don't worry about interrupting me for that. I'm very open to people telling me things that I've forgotten. I get very distracted explaining certain things, and I may miss chests or I may miss a path or something like that, so please point it out to me. In this case, we are definitely going to go down here. However, the interaction down here, I want to have as many party members available to me as I can before I go down there because of how the interaction down here works. You get one shot at it with each of your characters. So if I fail with all 3 of them, I would just have to go get a 4th character and bring them down here and try and do it that way. So I'm going to wait until I get a full party put together, and then I will be coming back here. I will be fast traveling back here and making my way over here to open this up. But for now, we're going to skip it. What we are going to do, however, now that we have Astarion with us in our party, is we're going to slowly make our way down around to this area.
On my way.
And we have a scared boar here. Now, in early access, there is an interaction you can have. I cannot have that interaction right now because I do not have any potions of animal speaking or anything like that on me. If you were a druid, you could shift into wild shape and go out there and talk to it. Right now, we're going to go out there and interact with it. Oh, thank you guys very much. I certainly appreciate the subscriptions. Thank you again. From the bottom of my heart, I appreciate that. So you see there's a conversation option here.
Seems like a good moment to talk.
Okay. So as our bard, we have not just with our bard, but with any character, if you have an animal handling skill, you're going to be able to apply your proficiency bonus to it. Now, Jack of all trades means that even though we're not proficient in animal handling, we have a +1 from Jack of all trades. So we can observe it and just see what it does, or we can try and calm it here using the +1 bonus from animal handling. The DC is 10. We also have add bonuses down here, and this is something that you didn't see during the prologue. If you open this up, you can see that Shadowheart has a cantrip called Guidance. Now again, cantrips you can cast as often as you want. They do not take a spell slot. Guidance is one of the most beneficial cantrips you can have in this game, and that is not an exaggeration. Being able to cast Guidance and get a 1d4, 1 4-sided die bonus to any ability check is huge. So if I look at this right now, I have a DC of 10, my total bonus is +1. If I cast Guidance, now my total bonus is 2 to 5 out of a 10. That means I have anywhere from a 20% to a 50% chance to pass this between a 50% and then, that's correct. I had it right. That's between a 25 and a 75% chance now to pass this DC based upon this bonus range. That's a huge bonus, whereas previously I just had a +1 down here. So it adds up to 40% bonus on my roll here. Okay, didn't need it. Rolled a 19.
The boar grunts and eyes you warily with its beady eyes.
Okay, so you saw there was an approval from Shadowheart. So her approval went up because we tried to calm things down. We didn't try to just attack it. So that gives you some insight into her character and how interactions are going to be able to affect that approval with her later on.
The boar shuffles its trotters, unsure. Then it dashes away into the wilderness.
Okay. So there is some balsam back here. We can pick that up. So what do I look for in my party composition in my playthroughs? I am rather old school. And as we're moving around, I'll kind of explain this. And we can also go back here. Oh no, we can't. It doesn't show me the passive perception roll that I made against Astarion. So as we're walking around, I'm rather old school in my party compositions. I want a spellcaster, a singular spellcaster, and in this playthrough, I'm going to use Gale temporarily, just because he's the first spellcaster I'm going to find. But then I'm going to switch to Will, and there's a very specific reason for that I'm going to explain once we get to that portion of it. And then I want a pure damage dealer. Somebody who is melee based, that just is single point damage focused to take out those high hit point enemies. So in this case, a fighter, a barbarian, a druid, depending upon how you're playing a druid, or paladin are the focuses that I tend to go with for that. So I have spellcasting, I have damage dealing, and then the other two are a little bit flexible, but what I tend to do is one that's able to do buffing and debuffing. So either a cleric using healing as well as buffing and debuffing, or in this case, a bard to do that same type of stuff. And then I also want to have somebody who is able to deal with all of the traps, perception checks, and locks in this game. So a ranger, which was in my first playthrough, handled all of the lock picking, but when it comes to lock picking and sleight of hand, a pure rogue is just absolutely amazing. And you're going to see that in this playthrough as we go, how kind of stupidly overpowered Astarion is when it comes to picking locks. It's just kind of crazy. So those are my four: spellcaster, damage dealer, healing / buffing, debuffing, and some sort of lock picker / perception check person. So we have another pathway that leads up here. We're going to hold off on that for now. We're going to make our way back into here. And we're going to make our way up this way. And you can see on our minimap we now have a Mind Flayer that is shown up on our minimap. And you can see it's right here. And it's dying. So we're going to make our way up and around here. And just open up the minimap a little bit more before we have that interaction. So, and again, remember the verticality here. So you could jump to here and jump to here. So if there's a chest up here, you'd be able to get it. So don't overlook the ups and downs in this game. They love, in all the Baldur's Gate games, they have loved that verticality. So be sure that you don't overlook it. And then, as you see, this pathway leads us back out the same way we were where we encountered Astarion. So I'm just going out here to open up the mini-map and make sure that there's no other supplies out here. And there do not appear to be. So now I'm going to go back in here and deal with the Mind Flayer. No worries. If I have a chance to answer your questions, feel free to ask. Like I say, I get a little busy sometimes explaining portions of the game, so if I miss your questions, I apologize. But got a lot going on here. So we're going to interact with the Mind Flayer, and you can choose whichever character you want to have this interaction with. Keep that in mind. You don't have to interact just with your main character. You could have this interaction with Shadowheart or Astarion, and that might be better or worse depending upon the skills that you may need to deal with in an encounter. I have high charisma here, and looking at our character sheets, I have an average wisdom. Shadowheart would be better at wisdom. I have a high charisma. I have the highest, so I'm better at that. Astarion's better at dexterity, but you don't need dexterity when it comes to interactions. So picking how you want to deal with this interaction based on what your character skills are is also an important part of this game. And I'm going to do this interaction with Shadowheart here.
I ought to speak.
You approach the dying monster. This is the thing that abducted you. You could end its life here and now, if only you didn't feel compassion. Compassion.
Okay, so you can see that the Mind Flayer is trying to make us feel a certain way about this encounter, and we probably don't want to do that, right?
You can't move, can't think. Thinking is mercifully done for you. It will be a joy to serve, to die for it an honor. It's possessing your mind, forcing you to love it, but then the feeling slips. The creature's mind seems to focus elsewhere.
Okay. So here we have an intelligence check, and this is one of the reasons that I chose to do this with Shadowheart. Remember, her Bardic inspiration is still active. Okay. So here you can take advantage of the lapse and break free, or you can try and delve into its thoughts a little bit more and see what's going on. I do not have a high intelligence character in the party here. Gale, for instance, is not with us yet. But I do have a Bardic inspiration roll here, so I'm going to click on this. The DC is 10, but I'm getting plus 1d6 from a Bardic roll. And I can add in guidance here as well. Oh boy. The worst roll you can get with without automatic failing it. So even with all the bonuses that I had, that's the thing about D&D right there. So I failed it.
Through, but its mind is impenetrable. With a last surge of defiance, it slaps your efforts away. The monster lies exhausted, defeated. Its eyes, wet orange pearls, radiate malice.
Okay, so
Monster.
again, it just illustrates that it doesn't matter how high a percentage you have when it comes to passing a particular roll. It is based upon RNG. Those dice rule, and you will quickly learn, if you have no experience with tabletop, how fickle those dice can be in certain situations. So you just have to laugh it off. It is what it is. So we have a potion of speed, and we have another void bulb. Now, potion of speed is incredibly important.
What to do?
Incredibly valuable and useful. I've got 3 of them, so I'm going to split them. I'm going to split this one again, and I'm going to give 1 potion of speed to each of them. Astarion and Shadowheart. Did I give those? No, I gave them both to Shadowheart. Or I gave them both to Astarion. Good job. So we're going to split that and do what I was supposed to do, which is give it to Shadowheart. Okay, so you see we do have a flashing arrow here for Astarion because he's able to level up based on his experience. Bardic Inspiration cannot be stacked multiple times. You have one Bardic die available to you once it's cast on you. However, you can have multiple Bardic Inspirations active on different characters. So, I have 2 Bardic Inspirations left. I could cast one on Astarion and one on Shadowheart and have them both active. You cannot cast Bardic Inspiration on yourself. But if I cannot cast 2 Bardic Inspirations on Shadowheart and have her have multiple Bardic dies available to her. So for here, let's go to Astarion and level him up real quick. Now for pure classes, especially Rogue, which is a martial class, the level ups are going to be fairly uneventful when you just look at them. However, behind the scenes, they are incredibly powerful. This is what makes pure fighters, pure wizards, pure rogues so very, very powerful, because they're not a blend of multiple different things. They spend all of their energies focusing on being as powerful as they possibly can be. So for a pure rogue, we get class features here, 2 of them at level 2. Cunning Action Dash and Cunning Action Disengage. I'll explain both of those once we move back out here to the character screen. So right now, 2 new icons have popped up over here. You see those same icons are here. Okay, Disengage and Dash. But you see they have a green dot. That means that they are an action. However, those 2 cunning actions are not actions. They are bonus actions. Which means that I can cast Cunning Action, double my movement speed, move twice as far as I normally would be able to, and still execute an attack or some other action at the end of that movement. Whereas if I dashed, I could move twice as far, but that would use my action and I wouldn't be able to do anything else except bonus actions once I got there. That makes these 2 abilities extremely powerful. You will see me utilize these almost every combat encounter with Astarion, and you will get to see just how powerful him moving all around the battlefield and moving in and out of hiding are for a pure rogue. It's, again, borderline overpowered in what he can do as far as turning the tide of combat. Oh, Pete, there's that. You know, I used to think the same thing in tabletop a lot. Even though I would see the die roll around on the table in front of me, I could swear that something was reaching out and changing that die, so I'd roll a 1 when I absolutely didn't need it. I wouldn't expect that Larian would be doing that, and the backlash, if anybody ever looked through the game code and data mined and saw a hard-coded roll somewhere, would be outrageous. But yeah, it makes you feel a little better if you can think, man, this thing's just weighted against me. It makes you feel a little less bad. So you can see that there is another pathway up here. I can move up here, jump across this flames, or throw some water here and put it out and move up this way. We don't need to, though. We're going to get into that area a little bit later. So, again, I'm going to continue around this way. And again, using my short movements here and holding Alt, you can see we have some dead goblins.
Dead goblins over there. Worth checking for supplies, maybe.
Okay, so we have a hand axe, a goblin scimitar, a bone, which again is not used for anything in early access, but maybe that would be able to be ground up into powdered bone or something for a crafting ingredient. We have no idea yet until it releases and we see what the crafting mechanic is like. So don't overlook some of the things that I'm doing here. So this big camp supplies I can send to camp. Potion of healing I'll keep. The goblin bow I will keep. And Astarion's got a short bow, which for him is 1d6 plus 3. The goblin bow is again 1d6 plus 3, so no benefit there. What we can do, however, is up Shadowheart's armor class. She's proficient in medium armor. We have Scale Mail here at 14. She's wearing a chain shirt at 13. So we can up her armor class to 18 now because of that extra bonus there. Astarion is only proficient in light armor, same as me, so neither one of us can wear this chain shirt right now. I will also move over these trap disarm kits. Okay, and those aren't stacking for some reason. That's one other thing about this game that's a little bit strange in early access, is the stacking seems to be a little strange. They should stack on top of each other, but that one that he started with is not able to be stacked with the other two. It's just kind of weird that way. So, just clearing out some more of my inventory here real quick, because all of that affects my carry weight. And now we're good. Does the game have a 30 FPS option? That's interesting. Something I can explore and look later on. I don't know if there's a frame cap option in the settings or not. But yeah, most games nowadays
There may be even more that survive.
do have a frame cap set in them, but I just haven't explored it. I'm lucky enough to have a really good PC, so. So here in our travels, we did open up another rune circle, and this is as good as time as any to talk about the map and the fast traveling. You do not have to click on a rune circle to fast travel. You do, however, have to unlock a rune circle to be able to fast travel to it. What I mean by that is that if I just walk up here and I click on this rune circle, it's going to bring up the map, and I can fast travel to any other unlocked rune circle. You don't have to do that, though. You can just open up the map. Your waypoints that you've unlocked are over here. And if I just clicked on Overgrown Ruins, it's going to fast travel me over here. So if you ever get into a spot where one of your characters is trapped, or it can't make a jump or anything like that, all you have to do is select that character. If they're in a party, it will fast travel everybody in the party together. If you are individual and I fast travel, it's just going to fast travel that single character. So something important to remember. But you can just open the map and click on a waypoint and fast travel to it. So there is no such thing as getting stuck and not being able to get out in this game. You can always fast travel to get out of it. Now, there are some limitations on when you can and can't fast travel, meaning when you're in combat, that sort of stuff, you're going to have limitations on whether you can fast travel or not. But as far as locations, there's only one other location that I found in early access that you cannot fast travel out of. Everything else you'll be able to fast travel. So keep that in mind. And now we're going to be able to interact with the rune circle. And this is going to be a little different in the full version. If you saw the full version and how this interaction works, you'll see how it works here versus how it's going to work in the full version.
Let's see.
You're alive. That's unexpected. Last I saw you, you were lying in a crucible's worth of blood. An intellect devourer nibbling at your ear. Glad to see my eyes deceive me. I'm Gale. Well met.
And motive, that's a very good question. Remind me after this cutscene's over, and I will show you how to do that.
Very same. A traumatizing experience, if an instructive one. Yes. The ocular penetration by an illithid tadpole, which will end with our souls being snuffed like strands of weave caught in dead magic. Not to mention, you're staring at me like a Rashimi at a blackboard. You're no wizard, are you? Pity. But that'll have to wait. The primary need now is a healer. I take it you recall the insertion of the parasite? Are you aware that after a period of excruciating gestation, it'll turn us into mind flayers? A process known as ceremorphosis? It is to be avoided. I assume you're no accomplished healer either. Powerful cleric, maybe? How splendid! Perhaps you can look over some of my own verse. At a more opportune moment, however. You and I are in a whole lot of trouble. We need help, and I'm not sure where we'll find it in this wilderness. How about we embark on the quest for a healer together? Most excellent. Then, without further ado, let's be off. Besides, looks like you keep some interesting company. A woman with shadows for eyes, deep as the dark lake. Pleasure, madam.
Is it indeed? We'll see.
Okay, so yes, if you've and yes, Pete, you're right. This is the introduction that you have to Gale. In the full version, this is going to be entirely different with the Dark Urge, and you can go watch that live stream, or other great content creators have gone more in depth on that and how they think it's going to work based upon what they played at the Larian introduction event. So this is a lot different now. You're going to have different options for this when you get to the full version of it. But that's how it worked here. Now, Motive, as for your question, how do you check what each character is proficient in? If you go to your character sheet here, you have a list of all the proficiency bonuses that are in here. And then underneath it, you have skills. So if you go to skills, it lists all of your skills and what they currently are based upon your background, as well as your origin story, your race, and your ability scores. Okay, so this will tell you what your current numbers are. Now, with mine, it's a little bit deceptive because I also have Jack of all trades, which is available to me. So even though these are saying -1 to intelligence, I'm actually getting a +1 added on to these. So these are all 0. So everything that does not have this proficiency icon next to it, everything else you add 1 to it because of the Jack of all trades ability that I picked up when I leveled up to level 2. That's what makes the Bard so powerful as an overall buffing, debuffing, healing type of character, party support character, is just because they have proficiency in everything, basically. So now we've got Gale in our party, so we're going to level him up real quick. So Gale, for a pure wizard, going from level 1 to level 2. Again, they unlocked another level 1 spell, and now you get to pick a subclass, and this is incredibly important. Wizards, this is the first subclass choice that you get inside the early access here. And Evocation is the damage-dealing school of spells. That's basically what Evocation is. Every spell has a type to it, or a school of magic, so to speak, that goes along with it. So Featherfall, you can see, is a transmutation spell. Ray of Sickness is a necromancy spell. Witch Bolt is evocation. Anything that is going to directly cause physical damage is going to be an evocation spell. So you have a choice here between whether you want to be the more damage dealing focused or abjuration, which is more of your buffing, debuffing type of spells. Your bigger crowd control spells and that sort of stuff are normally under conjuration and that sort of stuff, or enchantment. But this is mostly your, again, buffing and debuffing. So you have a fork in the road here. My playthroughs tend to use my pure wizards as the big damage dealers, either point target or AoE, and that's what I'm going to use Gale for. The other good thing that comes with the subclass is you can see as you change subclass, the subclass features change. So you have Abjuration Savant or Evocation Savant. That basically means that you can, any evocation spell that I pick up on a scroll, it's only going to cost me half as much gold to learn the spell from that scroll. That is a wizard-only type of skill. You can pick up a scroll, or that's not a wizard-only. That is a wizard skill that they can pick up a scroll. If they have it in their inventory, they can use gold to study it and write it into their spell book. It's a little different than tabletop, obviously, which requires time and concentration to be able to do that. But here they're using gold as the currency to be able to do it. But that's the same for either one of these. It's just which type of spell costs half as much. The second feature is what makes this evocation subclass so important. Sculpt spells is incredibly powerful. If you cast an AoE spell on top of a group of characters that is an evocation spell, so for instance, Fireball. Fireball has a huge AoE radius. If my characters are intermingled with the enemies and I cast that spell, everyone in that area is going to take damage. However, with an evocation subclass, it creates little pockets of safety within that Fireball spell, so my friends do not take damage from those spells. That means I can just cast fireballs for days and not have to worry about allies taking damage from them. And that goes for any evocation spell. That does not work for conjuration spells. So, for instance, Cloud of Daggers or something like that. That is not an evocation spell. So he doesn't have pockets of safety in it, so any of my characters that walk through it or get hit by it will take damage. But for the main damage dealing spells, that's a huge benefit. So I'm going to go with evocation, and now my spells, the new spells that I'm going to pick here. So right off the bat, I can't stress enough how important Magic Missile is as a spell. Magic Missile does not do a lot of damage. It's 1d4 plus 1 from Gale in this perspective. It's a guaranteed hit. It never misses. So this is one of those ways that if you need to focus on a particular character and cause guaranteed damage to them, Magic Missile is a way to go. Because with every Magic Missile that hits, they have to roll a concentration check to maintain concentration on their spells, or it's just more damage that gets done against a target. There are so many reasons to keep Magic Missile that there's no reason not to take it as one of your spells. The only reason that you would think about not taking it is if you already have a scroll of it in your inventory and you can learn Magic Missile from that scroll. In that case, you want to take something else to learn, and you can just pay some gold to learn that spell. I don't. I want to have access to this spell right now, so that's what I'm going to choose. Magic Missile is not a concentration spell. It's a straight damage, and you can upcast it. So you can cast it level 1, level 2, level 3, and it adds more projectiles that can cause more damage or hit more targets at the same time as you upcast it. It's just incredibly useful. So from there, we have some choices on what we want to do. Chromatic Orb is, again, another evocation spell. It does big damage, and you can use it. You can pick which type of damage you want to do with it. Okay, so I can cast thunder, acid, cold, fire, lightning, or poison damage depending upon what I think what the enemies are resistant to or what they're vulnerable to. So starting off, Chromatic Orb is very, very useful. You can look through some of my other playthroughs to go through more in depth on all of the spells. Ray of Sickness is very, very useful. I can't overlook it. I'm just going to focus on Chromatic Orb this time instead. But as far as the rest of them, feel free to look through some of the previous playthroughs because they are very, very useful spells. But I'm going damage dealing, so that's why I'm picking these. So from my prepared spell list here, so now I can go through my spells that I have available to me and pick what I want. So I definitely want to have Magic Missile available, Chromatic Orb available. Thunder Wave can be very, very useful. You have to be right up next to somebody to cast it, but it can be very useful. Sleep is a great early game AoE crowd control type of spell. So, especially for low hit point enemies, it can be very, very good. Grease is a very, very good AoE area denial spell. It creates a huge 4-meter diameter area where people their movement speed is cut in half, and they can possibly fall over prone. And when they're prone, any melee attacks against them are automatically crits. So it can be incredibly useful. I'm just not going to focus on it right now. Fog Cloud and Witch Bolt. Witch Bolt is going to be my concentration spell that I'm going to take. The others right now are non-concentration. Fog Cloud is also concentration, and that's also what I'm going to take. I'll probably end up swapping out Fog Cloud later on, but this gets me a good mix of damaging and AoE non-concentration as well as concentration spells. Okay. And again, I apologize if I'm kind of blitzing through some of the character level ups here. But can I have the NPCs in your party also level up? That's a really good question. And one I'd have to explore. I never do that, even when I have the opportunity to do it. And I have not explored if that is an option in this or not. I simply like to have much more control over my characters than that, so I don't really know off the top of my head. If anybody else in the chat knows, please let us know, and we can look at if there's an option to turn it on and off. But yeah, sorry, I just don't know, Derek. So now we're just exploring, opening up more of the mini-map, and again, moving. We haven't explored this area, so we're moving in short bursts. Okay, and we're going to make our way down here. You see there's some rogue's morsel over there we can pick up. And again, we're just opening up the mini-map and looking around while we're moving to make sure that there's no areas below us that we could possibly jump to. And you see here, there's a chest out here. And you can make your way over here. And I'm going to split my group here. And who has the highest strength out of everybody? So Shadowheart has a 12. So I'm going to take Shadowheart on this. Okay, and I'm going to jump her down here. And now I can walk over here.
On I go.
And follow this path out here across this rock bridge to this chest out here. That is a perfect example of how you want to explore the verticality of this game. If you're just quickly walking around following the path that's laid out for you, you would miss things like this entirely. And there's an elixir of fire resistance in there. There's a garnet ring and a caustic bulb. Okay, so there might be really average loot, there might be really great loot or unique items in there, and you will never know unless you go check them out. So very, very important to look around as you're exploring. Okay, we do have some balsam over here we can pick up. And we're going to jump ourselves back up here. The reason I chose the highest strength character is because strength determines how far you can jump. If you have low strength, you might not be able to make the jump back up here. And in that case, you could just fast travel your character back to the roadside cliffs and walk back up here. But I just wanted to be able to illustrate what strength has and what it affects when it comes to moving your characters around. So we also have some rogue's morsel up here that we can pick up. And we're going to kind of move around this way, holding alt periodically again. And you can see we have another path that heads up this way. And we have a path that heads over here toward this area. You can see this is that door we were talking about earlier that was locked and heads into this area with some overgrown ruins here that you can see that's now popped up on our map here. We're not going to go that way just yet. We are going to go on a little exploration up here for a very particular reason. And that's that right now, one thing that we're a little short on is pure damage dealing. You see, we have a lot of healing, buffing, and debuffing, but we're a little short on pure damage dealing. You can see on our mini-map, we have a couple of NPCs that popped up, and there's a cage that's suspended up here. We are going to say goodbye to Shadowheart at this point.
Something the matter?
Okay, and we're going to have her go back to our camp.
If you're sure. As you like. Perhaps I'll see you at camp.
And that's because I want to free up a party slot for what's going to happen in this encounter.
You think it's dangerous?
Because here you can see that Lae'zel is trapped in this cage. Okay, so we want to go up here and see what we can do about recruiting Lae'zel into our party.
Right. Yellow as a toad, twice as ugly.
The thing's dangerous. Leave it for the goblins to kill.
And if it escapes, how will you... Oh, a guest.
Your skull pounds in response to the prisoner's white-hot stare. Her lips don't move, yet you hear her voice.
You again. Get rid of them.
Okay, so now you see we have our first real introduction to influencing a conversation. Okay, so we have options here based upon deception and persuasion. Now, like I said during character creation, you're going to get a lot of conversations that have both of these options together in them, as well as intimidation. So picking, you don't need all three proficiencies between those. You could really get by with just one, but it's better to have two because you never know which one is going to pop up. You may have perception and persuasion, deception and intimidation, persuasion and intimidation. So having any two out of those three guarantees that you're always going to have proficiency in something. So here, I have proficiency in both of these, so I can pick either one of these two to try and influence how this encounter goes. So I'm going to try a deception check. The DC is 10. I have +3 from charisma, +2 because I have proficiency in that skill, which I chose at character creation. So I have a total bonus of 5. The thing that I'm now missing is the guidance cantrip from Shadowheart. And that, again, I said how important it was. It's going to play a big deal until we can find a replacement for that in our party. Wow. Just barely got it. Rolling really badly today. I'm glad everybody's here to see how badly I'm rolling. Hopefully the RNG will balance itself out.
Let's go. We need to check out that blast. You didn't hear it. Shook our camp good, so we came for a look.
Okay, so now we can try another persuasion check to find out if we can get a location for this camp. The DC here is 5. I have a bonus of 5, which you would think I can't fail it. However, a natural 1 always fails. A natural 20 always passes. So even with this, I still have a 1 out of 20 chance to fail this.
Northwest. Look for Nettie. Whatever your wound, she can mend it.
And be careful. There are goblin traps everywhere.
Nymessa, come.
Enough gawking. Get me down.
Okay, so now Lae'zel is still inside the cage, but you can see that there's a weakened base. You can now get a ranged attack on this, and you can see there's a quest marker on our map for recruiting Lae'zel. And just to go back to our quest journal real quick, we unlocked the Get Help from Healer Nettie quest by passing that perception check and having the tiefling let us know where their camp was. Okay, so that popped up because of that. Free Lae'zel is part of the main Chapter 1 quest that goes along with Remove the Parasite. And then our companion quests, there isn't anything in these right now except encounters, or basically recaps of the encounters that we've had with them. And we'll get another one down here once we recruit Lae'zel into our party.
Enough dawdling. Get me down. The tadpole hasn't yet scrambled all your senses. Auspicious. But the longer we wait, the more it consumes. My people possess the cure for this infection. I must find a creche. You will join me. It is many things. A hatchery, a training grounds, a shelter. Githyanki protocol is clear. When infected with a Ghaik tadpole, we must report to Augustil for purification. You may as well suggest a wyvern bow to worms. The cure I offer will suffice as thanks. You have made an ally from Kresh Kalir. Few know such fortune. Call me Lae'zel. Come. The Horned Ones mentioned a camp. One there, this Zoru, has seen Githyanki. A Kresh must be near. We will ask this Zoru where he has seen my kin.
Okay, so we got 2 new journal updates there. We recruited Lae'zel into our party, and we can level her up. So let's do that, and then we'll check our journal real quick. So Lae'zel, as a pure fighter, again, going from level 1 to level 2, just like a pure rogue, it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot going on here. However, her class feature she gains at level 2 is Action Surge. Incredibly powerful. Again, this lets you use your class action to gain an extra action during a turn. Now, Action Surge needs to be reset, and you will see you can't just use it every turn to gain an additional action. However, if you look here, the Action Surge is only available in combat, and you have to take a short rest to replenish it. That's key, because that will lead into the conversation about the rests. So I said I was going to be your tutorial for how resting works, and we're going to do that here in just a second, because before we get into the Overgrown Ruins, you can see I've only got 1 spell slot left. So before I get there, I will talk about the rests, and we will explain how that works. But for now, we picked up the Everburn Blade from Commander Zolk, and we're going to give that to Lae'zel. That is a huge damage boost for her. She's already wearing the best tied for the best medium armor in early access with an armor class of 15. So she is now set up with where she needs to be. I can also send these off to camp. Everybody has at least 2 healing potions. I can split off 3 of these. Then I can split these 1 and 1, and I can transfer 1 to everybody. Okay, so now everybody has 3 and my bard has 2. So we're also carrying a bunch of items that we're going to end up selling at some point, but the scrolls here we can give to Gale. And I can show you how his evocation subclass works. In that if you go to spellbook for Gale, you can prepare spells, which we've already done, but there's also this icon here for learn more spells. If you click on it, it's going to pop up a list of all the spells that he has scrolls for in his inventory that he does not already know. So right now it's only False Life. You can put a check mark next to it and you can see it's going to cost 50 gold for him to learn it. Okay? Or you can just, if you don't want to learn it, you can just cast that spell from a scroll and it shows up in your inventory list. So he can just cast that spell from here. Or he can also learn it directly from your inventory, so you don't have to open up that option. But Gale, a wizard, has the option to learn those spells from scrolls. He already knows the Firebolt cantrip. He already knows the Chromatic Orb cantrip. The Scroll of Mage Armor he already knows as well, I believe. Yes, he already knows it. So those are not going to show up in his list of what he can and can't learn because he already knows them. Okay, but that expands a little bit on how that portion works. So now that we're up here, I'm going to head over toward these overgrown ruins again. And we're going to get ready for our first major combat encounter since we left the Nautiloid. Okay, so now you can see on our mini-map, we have an NPC icon that popped up over here. So I am going to put everybody into hiding.
Breathe deep.
Okay, I'm going to move up here and I'm going to toggle the group. I'm going to take Lae'zel and I'm going to move her around because you can see that there is a patrolling what looks like magic user over here, and there are a couple of what look like fighter types down here, as well as Warren, who's a ranged character up here. Okay, and I want to prepare for this encounter here, so I'm going to, again, positioning, like I've mentioned before, is very, very important in this game. So I'm going to take Lae'zel, and now that I've gotten kind of back away from there, I'm going to bring her out of hiding so she can move faster. And I'm going to move her down here into this area where we were previously. Once I get close, I'm going to again put her into hiding. And I'm going to kind of move her up here. Now remember, there's a surface here, twisting vines, so if I move onto them, I could possibly get caught in them, and that's why my path turns red. Okay, but I'm going to initiate this combat with Lae'zel, but I'm going to do it in a fairly special way.
What is it?
So now with Astarion, going to move him over here around the corner so he's not seen. I'm going to kind of do the same thing with Gale over here.
Let's not get caught off guard.
And I'm going to put my bard right here in the middle. Okay, now I said I was going to initiate this with Lae'zel, and that is what I'm going to do. But what I've got is I've got 3 of my characters that are up here on high ground. So I'm going to get that +2 bonus against anybody who's on the low ground. But they're also in hiding. So if I initiate this combat from somebody else, they won't be focusing on them. They'll be focusing on whoever initiated that combat. Now with this combat, it's important with all the options that are available that you explore and you look around for various options to deal with encounters in different ways. Okay, so when you are exploring, you can see that there's, and I'm moving my mouse over it, and you see the icon changes to, and now there's a cracked stone right here. That stone is cracked. Well, what can I do with that? I can interact with it right now, but I'd have to walk all the way up there to touch it, and everyone would see me. But right above it is a foundation block. Okay? So maybe I can drop that foundation block onto this and maybe cause damage or drop the floor out maybe and have them fall through. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So we're going to take our short bow, and you can see my ranged attack only reaches out to here. So I want to move my camera so I can see where Lae'zel is going to move as I get outside that ranged area. So you can see she's going to have to move all the way up to here. You can see where her shadow's moving. That's very important because you don't want to have her move into an area she's going to get detected before she does this ranged attack. So if I click on the foundation block here, or the coiled rope here, then you can see that she'd have to move up and she's not going to get detected before she does it. Okay? So we're going to have her attack this.
Out of the shadows.
Okay? Now with Lae'zel, I'm going to... She is now the focus of the combat. Okay, so she is sleeping, so I'm now going to forced turn mode this. So, here's what happens, or the risk you run when you initiate combat with only one of your characters. If that character gets disabled, none of your other characters are in combat, and if that character does not work its way out of that disablement, they will just keep getting constant damage over and over and over again, and they will die. And that wouldn't happen if all of your characters were in combat, because all of them would roll initiative up here. So if you find yourself in a situation where your character is disabled and they're not able to get a turn, and they're just taking more and more damage, instantly click on one of your characters that's not in combat and go into forced turn mode. That will stop it, so that then you can move your characters in a controlled way to deal with the combat here. Okay. So in this case now, Lae'zel shook off the effects of sleep because she was damaged. So in damaging that, she woke up, and she now gets her turn again. So what I'm going to do, though, is I can move in here, but you see, I might not be close enough. If I click on the Everburn Blade, yes, I can actually make an attack. It's only 65% chance to hit. So let's see if we can improve those odds with our different characters here. So I'm going to move, I think first I'm going to bring Astarion around the corner here.
Nice and easy.
Okay, now Warren here, you see I have advantage because I'm in hiding. So since I have advantage, I can do the rogue specialty, which is a sneak attack. So if you look at what it does, it shoots the weak spots of a foe that you have advantage against, and it does double damage. Okay. So here, if I do this, that's now 4 to 9, but it's going to double that. as a possible damage here. So I'm going to try a ranged attack here. Okay, so he rolled really low, it looks like. Yep, his damage roll was only 3, so he rolled really, really low on that. So, but he's now in combat. He rolled initiative, and there is where his turn is. So now I'm going to bring Gale around the corner here. And I'm going to have Gale cast magic. I think... No, I'm actually going to have him cast Chromatic Orb here. I'm going to use the Thunder variant. Okay, so it didn't kill him. He's got just a tiny bit left. But now Gale is in combat, so he rolled initiative fairly high up here. So now I've got a couple of different options. I can either focus and try and take Warren out of the fight, or I can try and deal with Kalena down here. And the way you determine which way you want to go is based upon who's going to attack next. So you can see that Kalena, after Lae'zel attacks, Kalena is going to be the next one to act. There's an hourglass in front of Astarion, meaning he's not going to be able to act this turn because he already acted. So I want to be able to focus Kalena here, but also once she attacks, the next person to attack is going to be Warren. So they're both going to be able to attack next, so it doesn't really matter who I focus on. So I think what I'm going to do is try and focus down Warren here with my Bard, and I'm going to see what Vicious Mockery is a 60% chance to hit, and if it hits, it's a 50% chance to do a kill. Dissonant Whispers is a guaranteed kill if it hits with 60%. A regular ranged attack is a 91% chance to hit because we're in hiding, and it's a guaranteed kill if it hits.
You've made a grave mistake.
Okay, so that removed Warren out of the list, and now Lae'zel's not going to get any help in her attack here, but we're going to let her move in and try and get a kill here. Kalena has 10 hit points. The sword damage up at the top you can see is 6 to 19, so we have about a 65% chance that this is actually going to get a kill if the attack hits.
This is your end.
And it did. Okay. So that is, and this, ironically enough, leads you exactly where I was going to go with the rest of this. So we're going to group the party up here, and because Lae'zel's down here, it's not able to group her up. So that gives you an idea about how you can split your party into multiple groups, if you would like, and move them around the battlefield. So the Arrow of Acid, we're going to send to Astarion. The short bow and the leather armor, we're just going to pick up. We have more camp supplies. And now we can make our way down here toward the bottom. And we can search the two individuals who did not even get a chance to attack, which is the best of all worlds here. The trap disarm kits and the thieves tools need to go to Astarion, and we'll just pick these things up. We'll search Gimblebach. The Malachite I'm going to pick up with my high charisma. I'm going to be the one selling stuff. Dried pork sausage we can send to camp, and there's a shovel. Now, unlike the rope that we talked about earlier, shovels have a very specific purpose in the game. You want to have a shovel on at least one character. Okay? So you don't have to carry a shovel on everybody, but you need to have a shovel on at least one of your characters. And could you use Force Turn to basically a free surprise round for each character before the enemies do anything? You certainly can. That's exactly kind of what I illustrated when I went in. Keeping characters out of combat allows you to initiate combat, and then on one of your character's turns who's in combat, you could move your other characters around, and you're not limited by your movement restrictions. or anything like that. So you can move wherever you want on the battlefield as long as you don't cross into a detection cone or threaten somebody else. So that's why positioning and being able to manage who is in combat and who is not at the start is very, very important. Don't just keep your party in a big group and rush them all in at the same time. Figure out how you want to initiate the combat with characters that are best able to roll high in initiative, which is normally Astarion. I wanted to do Lae'zel simply because I wanted Astarion to be able to get sneak attacks from the high ground from up here. But yeah, keeping characters in and out of combat is a way to maximize your benefits in this game. You don't have to. You can play it however you want, and you can be perfectly fine on certain difficulty levels without doing that, but you certainly want to be able to maximize that on higher difficulty levels. Okay, so now we can come back down here. We can search Kalena. And we have another book here. This is not a clue book or anything like that, so we can just pick it up, but feel free to read it. I'm just not going to. And now I'm going to toggle my group and put everybody in the party back together. Now, while we are out here, we're going to do a little bit of exploring and searching. Yes, that is exactly right. That is the benefit of a pure rogue or an assassin, is being able to sneak attack, and especially sneak attack from high ground.
I'll take that.
It's just so beneficial. So you will see that as we level him up and he gets multiple bonus actions, how powerful he can be moving around the battlefield. It's just, it's honestly borderline overpowered what what dedicated rogues can do. So some more camp supplies here, some thieves tools, which we'll send to Astarion. A dagger. There is torches and another rope. This, I guess, is as good a time as any to explain obscured vision. If you go to your character or your character features, you can see that we have a couple of characters with dark vision. Okay, dark vision means that you can see in the dark up to 12 meters. So if you're within 12 meters of a target, you can see them just fine. So my Bard and Astarion both have that ability. For Gale and Lae'zel, they do not have it. So if they're in a dark area and they go to attack somebody who's also in a dark area, the target is going to be obscured, and you're going to incur disadvantage on your attack. Now, there are ways to overcome that, meaning that you can take a torch, you can light it, you can throw it toward an enemy, and then you can move toward that enemy with that torch, and that torch illuminates them, and now that disadvantage is gone. You can also use things like dancing lights or the light spell to be able to illuminate an item or an area to help offset that disadvantage. But it's important to remember which characters have the ability to see in the dark and which ones don't when it comes to planning out how your attacks are going to work, because disadvantage is incredibly bad for your characters to be under when you're trying to make an attack. So torches help offset that. You can light a torch, you can carry it with you, or you can throw it toward an enemy and illuminate them, and then move toward them with your weapon to make an attack without disadvantage. I have other ways of working around it, so I'm not going to carry any torches with me on this playthrough, but keep that in mind, that there is a way to offset the disadvantage due to being obscured. So now we're going to come down here to the bottom, and we're going to come up to this door, and this door is also lock pickable. Okay, but we're just going to click on it. Okay?
Everything all right? alright out there?
Okay, so there's somebody inside that door. Okay, and they're friends of Gimblebach. Gimblebach is unfortunately now dead. We killed him. So we have multiple ways to approach this encounter. So we can just go in swinging. We can do a performance check, which I have, again, proficiency with, as well as a deception check, which I have proficiency in, or I can just leave. I am going to try and enter this area through a different way. This is the main way into the chapel, is through this door. I'm going to show you the other ways, and as part of that, I'm not going to go in through that door. But that's what the main way is there, is just convincing him to open that door. Now, another way in is here. If you jump your character down into this area, you will enter the chapel in a very specific spot. Now, it's a pretty far jump down, so you are going to take a slight amount of damage, but this is another way to enter into the chapel. There is, however, a third way, and that's the way that I'm going to try and go. And for that, we're going to make our way back out this direction first. And once we get out here, we're again going to kind of take some small movements. Okay, and that saving throw was against the twisting vines. She was trying to stay in this diamond formation, and she walked right through it. That's that example I told you about earlier, that your characters will try and stay in this formation at all costs. In the earlier game, in the previous games, you had a way to change this formation. You could be lines, you could be in column, you could be in echelon, you could be in diamonds, you could be in all sorts of stuff. There isn't a way to do that in the early access. There might be in the full version. I would certainly hope so, because the pathing... This won't be the last time you hear it from me, but the pathing in this game is a source of antagonism for me. Question, why did you first engage in combat? Couldn't you try to resolve it differently? You absolutely can. Absolutely can. You can have a conversation with Gimblebach there. When you move in up here, you're going to get detected. Gimblebach is going to engage in a conversation with you, and you have a chance to persuade him to leave this area alone. They are bandits who are trying to loot this this chapel, and they're going to try and keep it. You have to pass a pretty serious persuasion check to get them to leave and leave all the spoils here to you, but you do not have to do it that way. I choose to enter combat just because later on down below we're guaranteed to get into combat with this same group. So I don't want to leave these guys out here just to get in and then have a second group of them down inside that we're going to have to kill anyway. So I took the combat route, but you can certainly play it any way you choose. Do you have to play with the other preset characters, or could you go solo too? Yeah, you can absolutely go by yourself. I can talk to any of these characters.
Well, hello. What can I do for you?
And I can have them stay at the camp. So you absolutely can play this by yourself. You absolutely can play this with just one other character or two other characters. You do not have to have a full party of 4. Absolutely do not. So again, I'm making my way around here. You can see there's a pathway on the mini-map up here. So I'm taking it kind of slow as we walk up here. Okay? And this is why you take it slow. Okay? My lead character failed a perception check. They rolled a 2. They have a +2 proficiency for a total of 4, and that was not enough to get you there. If you just clicked way up here and all of your characters ran through this, all of your characters are going to passively make that perception check without any bonuses, with just the bonuses that they have, and they may not pass that check. Okay? A better way to do it is to keep some of your characters back a little ways.
Careful, I'm behind.
And see if you can buff up the checks here on one of your characters. Now, that's a perception check. Okay, so if I go to my character sheets and I look at perception, perception is wisdom based. Okay, so you're looking for a character with high wisdom or a proficiency in wisdom to be able to make that check. So if I look at my other characters, Astarion has a +1 to wisdom, and that's the highest you're going to get outside of me. Okay, so what we want to do with Astarion now is we're going to use a Bardic inspiration.
So that's progress.
On Astarion, and now we're going to slowly move Astarion up here
On my way.
to this same spot,
That might
and
be worth
he
it.
passed the perception check. So you can see that he has a skill check. He rolled a 14. He has a +2 proficiency, but he got a +5 from the Bardic roll and a +1 wisdom modifier. So without the Bardic inspiration, he wouldn't have rolled a 22. He would have rolled a 17. And that may or may not have been enough to perceive this dirt mound here. So that's why I say it's important to move in short bursts through areas that you haven't explored. Because if you move all your characters past it, they're going to do it and they might not have buffs available to them, and they might all fail it, and you would never find this dirt mound.
Still breathing.
Now, this dirt mound is the reason that you need to have at least one shovel in your party, because you can click on that dirt mound, and now you can find there's a wooden chest, and you can search that chest, and there's gold and a torch in it. Okay? So if you didn't perceive that dirt mound, you wouldn't have the opportunity to dig up the chest. Even if you did perceive it, and you don't have a shovel, you can't dig it up. So that's what's important about being able to move in those short bursts. You want to give everybody the best opportunity you have to pass a perception check to maximize what you're able to find in the game.
Always room for more.
Okay, so we're going to keep moving on down here, and we're introduced to the next mechanic, which is the climb mechanic. You have these knotted roots here, which allow you to climb from a high area to a low area and vice versa. The climbing mechanic in early access is so broken. It's another source of frustration with me. Clicking on the knotted roots or the craggy rocks or the ladder or the net or whatever object it is that lets you climb up and down is definitely going to incur a thing where your characters climb down and then they climb back up to the top and then they climb back down again. Sometimes if you click far enough out in front of it, of where you want your characters to go, then they will all make the climb down and not climb back up. But we'll see what happens. Yep, see? That's what I mean. The pathing in early access, and I seriously hope that this has been worked on a little bit in the full version. The pathing is just absurd sometimes. It's just absurd. So you have to micromanage sometimes how your characters move to be able to get them to go where you want them to go. So we have a skeleton down here. Wonder if you'll be able to place markers on the map on the full release. That has actually been suggested in the forums as one of the quality of life improvements. Larian hasn't commented on it as far as I'm aware. But yes, I agree it would be really nice as well. That way, like the cliffside over there, which, or the cave, which we mentioned at the start of this live stream, that I said I was going back to, it would be great to be able to place a marker on your map to remember it, so to speak. I haven't forgotten it. That's the last thing I'm going to do in this live stream here. So, but you see now we have a door here, and we have another option here for getting into this chapel. This is definitely the way that I want to go. to get in there, and there are some very specific reasons for that. But this is the way I want to get into this. However, the door, it's very, very hard to pick. You're not meant to go in this way. This is meant to be, again, another exit, so to speak, not an entrance. So the door itself is very, very hard to pick. Okay? But we're going to give it our best shot here. And we still have a Bardic inspiration left, which is good because we're going to need that roll. And we're going to use that Bardic inspiration again on Astarion. Now, Astarion, we're going to have him lockpick this. Okay, so the difficulty class here is 20. Okay, that is the highest DC that you're going to see in early access. There is certainly the possibility of having higher DCs. In early access, that's the highest one that you can have. So you can see that our bonuses right now, we have a +3 from our dexterity. We have a +2 from proficiency in sleight of hand. We also have a +2 from expertise in sleight of hand, which is what pure rogues have. And we have a 1d6 bardic roll to be able to add to it. So our total bonus is 8 to 13. So instead of having to roll a natural 20 to pass this, all we have to roll is at the minimum a 12. And at best, only a 7. So again, that puts us at about a 44% chance to pass it with the minimum possible rolls off Bardic rolls. So let's see what happens here. Okay, so we did pass it. Bardic roll certainly helped. You can see that he unlocked the door here with the Thieves' Tools. We saw the roll from Bardic Inspiration that popped up. He rolled high. He rolled a 14. So he would have passed it anyway with a +2 from Proficiency, a +2 for Expertise. That is 18 with a +3 from his Dex is 21. So he didn't need to use his Bardic Inspiration there to do it. But that just also proves how powerful having proficiency and a high dex is to have Astarion in your party. The highest DC that we're going to encounter in early access, and he had almost a 50% chance of passing it at the minimum. So pure rogues, I definitely recommend that you have one in your party when you're traveling around. Now, because I have not forgotten about the other location over there. The other locations, I wanted to have a full party to be able to go through this and do it. However, now I need to explain the resting mechanic because I'm all out of Bardic Inspirations. And it says that my Bardic Inspirations recharge once per long rest. So we're going to take a rest here. But first, we are going to remember that cave that we talked about is over here. So I'm going to go to the roadside cliffs with a fast travel. And I'm going to make my way down through the Nautiloid over near that cave. And then we will explain the resting mechanic. And again, because I've explored these areas, I don't mind making my characters move long distances. I know that I'm not going to be missing any chests or anything because I've already walked over these areas. So now I'm here. We're going to go down this area here, but I need to take a long rest. So, explaining the resting mechanic, here is your resting button. If you click on it, you have two different types of rests. You have a short rest, which is basically you just close your eyes for a little bit, you relax, you take it easy, you sit down, and you get some, you do some preventative maintenance on yourselves. You restore some hit points. You also get some abilities back. For instance, Lae'zel, her pommel strike, you can see down there here, it recharges once per short rest. Same thing with her lacerate ability. Same thing with her action surge. So every time you take a short rest, those will come back. The Bardic ability for Bardic inspirations here, they recharge on a long rest. They do not recharge on a short rest. We also have the Song of Rest, which as an action, we can basically, have a concert. And it will act as another short rest. And I can do that once per every long rest. So I basically have 3 short rests available. I can just click this. There's 2 of 2 available. That's what the green dots mean. And I can get some hit points back. Not all of them. It's not going to regenerate my spell slots. It only regenerates spell slots for a warlock. It does not regenerate spell slots for clerics, rangers, paladins, wizards, anybody else. So long rest is how you replenish those spell slots or those abilities that say that they need a long rest to do it. So I could take a short rest here, and we'll do it just for fun. So you can see Lae'zel got her hit points back. She also got these abilities back here. Okay, her action rest or action surge is only available in combat. But you see, my spell slots are not back. My Bardic Inspiration is not back. I need to take a long rest for that. So we're actually going to do that, but first, we're going to look through our inventory and make sure we're not carrying any other camp supplies. We're just going to clear out our inventory a little bit. Make sure that we're not carrying anything else. So here's our supply pack. We don't need that. Okay. So now you can see under our long rest, you can see it says camp supplies 41 out of 40. Do we still have somebody carrying a pack? No, it just didn't update. Okay. So normally this is going to say 0 out of 40 because I don't carry any of my camp supplies. Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to click yes, and this is going to introduce you to the camp mechanic.
This seems as good a place as any to make camp.
Okay, so you have a voice-acted line there, and you also have an opportunity to now interact with your characters through dialogue options. This is very often how you progress their personal companion quests down here, is through these interactions. Every time you take a long rest, you want to go through all of the conversations that are available with all of the characters that you have currently unlocked. It's important because the more long rests you have, the more conversations you can open up. And if you don't talk to somebody during a long rest, you might not unlock things earlier in the game that you could. So make sure that you talk to all of your characters to try and advance all of these things as much as you can. So we're going to go through our camp here real quick, and you can see there's an icon above Lae'zel's head. That means she wants to tell you something important that's either going to advance the main quest or her companion quest in some way. So you want to make sure that you want to be able to talk to her at the very least if you don't want to talk to anybody else. So we're going to have a bit of conversation here, and then we're going to deal with the cave, and then we're going to fast travel back to that entrance to the overgrown ruins, and that's probably going to end our live stream today. So let's go through the conversations here and see what we have.
So we're resting here. Turning in for the night. It's all a little new to me, I admit. The night normally means bustling streets, bursting taverns. Curling up in the dirt and resting is, a little novel. I'm in no place to rest yet. Today has been a lot. I need some time to think things through. To process this. You sleep. I'll keep watch. The pleasure is all mine. Sweet dreams.
Okay, so now we can talk to Gale.
Go to hell. Ha! You're a good sport. Go to hell. An everyday expression. So trivial it's almost meaningless. But we've seen hell. It's real. And it isn't trivial.
A45, that's a great question. I'll expand on that once we finish the conversation here.
Devils, dragons, mind flayers. They used to be abstracts. Pictures on a piece of paper. What a difference a day makes. Now we have tadpoles slithering through our heads like carnivorous feti. That's not abstract. That's the spirit. Let's be up with the lark. Find a healer before the wee one gets hungry.
Okay, next we'll go talk to Shadowheart.
What's up for discussion?
What were you two talking about? Don't play the fool, please. I see. I'd be careful with who you confide in. Well, what do we really know about them? Let's hope we rapidly find a healer. You seem reliable. I think you know how important it is that we find someone who can cure us. Best if we focus on that. Good. We might even get lucky and find one right away. As I see it, we're overdue some good fortune. Rest well.
So there you saw the approval mechanic. We got 2 approvals, but yet Lae'zel disapproves of us trying to find a healer, because she definitely wants to go to the Githyanki Creche and not just go to some other healer. So A45, your question about is there any disadvantage to taking multiple long rests and how many are you limited to? You are only limited by the amount of camp supplies that you have. A long rest needs 40 camp supplies to be able to fully rest and restore all of your hit points and all of your spell points. If you have less than 40, you can still get some spell slots back and some hit points back, but not more than half. So 40 camp supplies is the magic number. Now, if you look in your traveler's chest in camp, I've been sending all of my camp supplies directly to this chest. When you click send to camp, this is where they go. So now inside here, you can see it's a big hodgepodge of stuff. In the full version, this is going to be organized a little better. But you can see this fish is worth 5 camp supplies. So I would need 8 of these fish to be able to take a full long rest. But you can grab out as many of these different camp supplies as you need to make up 40. There are also supply packs. Each one of these has a full night's rest in it. And I've got 6 of those. So right now I can take at least 6 long rests. I probably have enough with my other camp supplies that are in here to take at least 1 more full long rest after that. So right now I've already banked 7 long rests and I'm just in the 2nd episode of the live stream. So there is no disadvantage to taking multiple long rests. A lot of content creators will take a long rest after every single fight that they get in. In tabletop, your dungeon master would not let you do that. They tend to be a lot more unforgiving with your resting. And also, whenever you rest in tabletop, you have the chance to roll a random encounter. So in this camp, you would have one of your party randomly roll for an encounter, and depending upon what they roll, you could have a dragon attack your camp, or you could have a massive flood wash away your camp, and you have to make decisions on how to keep from drowning or washing away, or a bunch of other stuff. You're going to find so many camp supplies in this game that you can literally long rest every 10 minutes if you want. There are so many camp supplies. I just tend not to do that. I tend to play it more like I would in tabletop. And if I'm running out of ability charges or spell slots, that's when I take a long rest. But you can certainly do it more often. So next we'll talk to Lae'zel.
A monster forms inside us, yet you waste time with idle chatter.
Okay, so she's not interested in really talking. She wants to just to get out of it. So now I need to get 40 camp supplies. So I tend to save my supply packs for when I really need them. So I'm going to take and see if I can get a group of 40 camp supplies here. So if I take the Corget, that's 7. That's 12. That's 17, 20, 25, 30, 38. I can split that, and that should be 40. So now if I didn't already miss one that was in my inventory, now I can click on the cot here, and I can take a long rest. Don't forget that this entire outside camp spot, you can explore. You can look at the mini-map. You can explore it. As you pick up more companions, they will find areas in this camp to stay, and you can interact with them just like you can with your origin characters. But for now, I'm going to take a long rest. It's important to remember that elves do not sleep. They just meditate. So you will see my character not necessarily lay down and go to sleep, but just meditate. Okay? So here it says I need 40. Okay, so it looks like I had a rogue's morsel in my inventory, but if you auto-select... Okay, so I must have had a couple of other things in my inventory because I'm still going to have these two that it doesn't need to get me exactly to 40. So now I can full rest.
Where are you?
Okay, you saw a bit of a cutscene there on that rest where somebody asked, "Where are you?" It's going to be important to remember as we go along. So there's the rogue's morsel that I didn't need, and there's the fish I didn't need either. Okay, so somebody's talking to us in our sleep. That somebody is the same somebody that we chose at the beginning of character creation as to who do you see in your dreams. Okay, so I'm going to walk down here. I can't. I need to use the jump action to get down here. Okay, and now I'm going to make my way down here, and I'm going to split my party when I get down here. Okay, I'm going to split my group, and I'm going to take Jorvalin up here just by herself. She has proficiency in perception.
Nice view.
Okay, so it's a nature check. So she rolled a 2. Wow. She's not doing all that great with her rolls today. She rolled a 2. She got +1 from Jack of all trades. She got -1 because nature check is an intelligence modifier, so it's not a perception check. It's a nature check. So now what we need to do is find somebody who has either proficiency in nature or who has a high intelligence. And that person, Gale, has a 16 in intelligence. If you look at his skills, He doesn't have a nature proficiency right here, so but he's still getting +3 out of it. Astarion's getting +1. Lae'zel is getting 0. So our best chances with Gale, and we're going to use a Bardic Inspiration on Gale to give him a Bardic die to use on this check as well.
Very well. Nice view.
Wow, and he failed it too. He rolled a 2. Wow. This is going really, really well.
Let's get going.
So, I'm going to use another Bardic Inspiration here.
Someone there.
And have Astarion try. And
Nice
and
view.
don't think we're going to make it. I will try and maximize my chances, though. Lae'zel has no bonus modifiers at all.
I crave blood. Without delay.
And she was the one that perceived it. That's crazy. The person with the lowest ability to find it is the one who passed it, and she rolled a 15. So it was at least, at least a 15 or so to probably pass it. Looks like Astarion failed. Oh yeah, see, we rolled a 2, and a 5 before Lae'zel rolled decently with a 15. So now that we've perceived that there's a rock here, we knew that there was something under it because you could see that there was an ornate chest under here when I dragged over it, but you can't search that chest while the rock is still here. So I'm going to move Lae'zel off to the side here, and I'm just going to pick up that rock, and this is a mechanic that sometimes it works in some situations and not others. You can't throw this rock, it's too heavy, but you see I have a hand icon. You can pick it up, click, and drag that rock out of the way. Based upon your strength is how far you can move it. Okay? So now I've moved it out of the way, and now I can see the ornate chest. And now I can search it. Okay, so there's gold. There's a couple of potions of speed, which I'm going to split. I'm going to have Lae'zel take one. I'm going to send the other one to Astarion. There's a Harper's Notebook and Agate, which I'm going to send to Jorvalen and a Ruby. And then there's a Harper's Map on a Harper's Notebook. So we're going to read these. Okay, so this map has some Harpers, a little harp marks in an area called Moonrise Tower, and a small inky crescent sketched on a nearby forest, and the crescent has the word cache written beneath it. Okay. Then there's a Harper's Notebook, which again I can read, and it's basically a bunch of reports about what the Harpers have been up to and what a local Saloonite sect has been doing. For those of you who don't know about the Harpers, they featured rather prominently in the Dungeons & Dragons Honor Amongst Thieves movie. They are a very prominent group in the Forgotten Realms lore. You're going to learn more about them throughout both this game and throughout any lore that you experience that has to do with the Forgotten Realms. But for now, that map added a new icon to our full map here, a hidden cache. If you do not perceive that rock, you can't move it. If you can't move the rock, you can't open the chest. If you can't open the chest, you can't find that map, and without the map, you would not know that this hidden cache is there. So that's again one of those things that
Have to keep going.
multiple little seemingly unconnected things might have much bigger impacts to your playthrough than you might think. So now we're going to open up our map, and we're going to fast travel back to the roadside cliffs So, or actually, we're going to fast travel back to the Overgrown Ruins is down below. We want to be up top. So we're going to fast travel to the roadside cliffs and make our way back to that hatch that we picked our way into, which is just down here. Yes, Star, did you see the chest that was down there? Underneath the rock, there was an ornate chest, which I was only able to uncover because I moved the rock. So, but yes, that rock is part of a Harper's stash, and all of the Harper's stashes are going to have some fairly high difficulty checks, so it doesn't surprise me that we failed, but we did roll really, really low as well. So, okay, so looking at our mini-map here, just to take stock of where we've been and what we've done, we started down here on the Ravaged coast, and we kind of worked our way up here, unlocked the Overgrown Ruins, and saw that locked door. We made our way through the crashed Nautiloid, which is all this discolored area here. That's the ship that crashed that we were on and that we fell out of. We made our way down through this area, recruited Astarion here. We recruited Gale here, and we recruited Lae'zel up here. And that filled out our party. We found Shadowheart laying right down here. The only companion in early access that we have not recruited yet is Will. Will, we're not going to get access to him until we explore farther up here, when we get closer to the Druid's Grove. That's going to be a bit for us, but Will is going to become a permanent member of our party. And again, there's a specific reason for that we'll talk about when we recruit him, but I will be leaving Gale behind, and we'll be doing this playthrough with Will instead of Gale. That's going to be a bit controversial, in that Gale has the huge damage dealing ability with Fireball and things like that. But again, we're going to explain, and we will swap Gale in and out, just like we will with all of our other companions for specific quests that we need to complete with them. So the last thing that we're going to do is head here into the door, and we'll kind of explain what we're going to do down here inside, and then it will be time to end the live stream here. So we're going to click on the door, and this takes us into the Dank Crypt. You can see this ladder's what leads us up. And there's a lever here. That lever is what unlocks that grate. Or that hatch up top. It's meant to be an exit. So you come out this way, you click the lever, it unlocks it, you walk up, and you can make your way out that way. It's not meant to be an entrance, but we rolled well enough, and were able to pick it that way. And yes, you're right, Eric. I wasn't going to give that away yet, but yes, you're absolutely true. Will has a very specific origin trait with his patron that's going to help offset some of that. And again, we're certainly going to go into more of that when we explain Will. It's more of an in-depth decision that really has to do with the fact that I'm a bard here, and there's some benefits that go along with that Will specifically is going to benefit from. So what we have now is we're getting into this area here, and you can see that we have some entombed scribes that are dead. No, you're all right, Eric. Don't worry about it. No, it's perfectly fine. I love it when people anticipate where I'm going with my playthrough. It's great to see how everybody approaches playthroughs in different ways, but then at the same time how similar they can be as well. So I love that interaction. So, and we have a large area in here that we're going to be exploring. What I'm going to do off camera, I wasn't expecting to use up all of my Bardic inspirations, just trying to pass a perception check on that rock. So I am going to go back and take another long rest just so I can get my Bardic inspirations back. They're just way too important in a playthrough, and as the bread and butter of what a bard can do for buffing your party, I think it would be foolish if I didn't have a full set of them with me. So, but I'll do that off stream. There's no reason. I'm just going to go back. I'm going to pick up one of my supply packs, take a long rest, and be done with it, and I'll be right back here. So I'll do that off stream so I don't bother you. But we chose to enter this crypt in this particular area because of a specific interaction that we're going to have over here. You can see in something that's rendering in right now, there's a button on this wall. That button doesn't render, it's not visible until you've passed another perception check to see it. But there's a very important interaction that we want to have in there, and that's why we want to unlock that interaction as fast or as early as we can on the playthrough. So that's why we entered through this area, is simply so that we can get in there and unlock that interaction first. So there is going to be a bit of combat when we start off next week's live stream. This unlocking that encounter triggers a fairly large set of combat here. As part of that long rest, I am also going to bring Shadowheart back into the party for this. And, you know, actually we have 4 minutes left here before it ends. Instead of just talking about all of this, I might as well just go do it. So you're not surprised when the party has changed when we get back in here. So I'm going to talk to Astarion. That's interesting. This has changed in the patch. Gale has a mirror image there. So let's go talk to Astarion.
Very well.
So, not a tentacle to be seen? Naturally, but I was thinking, what if it doesn't? Of course, first sign of change, and I'll have to stop that pretty little heart of yours. I am open to suggestions. Knives, poison, strangulation, whatever you'd prefer. A classic. One good thrust to the heart and you're gone. We need a good blade, of course. Don't want to waste time hacking and prodding with a dinner knife. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. This is all a worst-case scenario, obviously. Oh, my dear. I'd like to see you try. Now, let's get some rest. The sooner we start tomorrow, the better our chances of keeping this hypothetical.
Okay, so this is another illustration that every time you take a long rest, you're going to have new conversations. Not every time, but a lot of times when you take a long rest, you're going to have new conversations pop up that you want to have.
What can I do for you?
Okay, so these things we'll go through later when we have more time, but I'm going to have him stay here in the camp.
Darling, I'm hurt. I thought we had something special. I guess I'll spend my evenings lounging here while you do all the hard work. It sounds awful.
And we're going to talk to Shadowheart, and we're going to recruit her back into the party.
I couldn't help but overhear. Well, alright, I could have helped, but didn't. Anyway, I feel the same. Other than the occasional mental exchange, it's almost as if we're not infected. The voice on the ship told me I'd become a beautiful weapon. What do you think it meant? Whatever they were, those plans were interrupted by the dragons. Either way, we can't take the lack of symptoms for granted. We have to find a healer. Well, I've said my piece. Get some rest.
Okay. So we'll talk to her again.
I wasn't expecting it, but I'm glad to have some company on this journey.
And again, we'll go through all of these options next stream when we have more time to go through them.
Some company wouldn't hurt on the road, especially if there's trouble.
Okay? But now she's in our party, and that updated our quest journal just to, say she doesn't seem to trust Lae'zel. That's all that really happened in the quest journal. So, with that, what I'm going to do is start out next live stream by having a few conversations here. We've unlocked some more conversations. Obviously, Gale's got something going on here with his mirror image. So we're going to save our game here. We will start out next live stream with some conversations and seeing what's happening here. We will take our long rest and get our Bardic inspirations back. And then we will make our way into that encounter inside of the Dank Crypt. And there's a specific reason why I wanted to have Shadowheart in the party, and that's just to showcase one of her abilities. So, with that, that brings us to the end of our 3-hour live stream. I hope everyone enjoyed your time here and got some answers to your questions, where we do this every Sunday from 2 p.m. Central Daylight Time until 5 p.m. Central Daylight Time, which for my European viewers is GMT -5, where I'm at right now. So you can adjust to your own time zones. So I hope to see you here again. And again, keep watch on the posts or the admin notes at the start of the streams for continuing this live stream as we go through the full version release and getting a bonus live stream for you guys, hopefully, as we go on through it. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining me today. Without your support, none of this would be possible. This is Commander Jorval saying, until next time, fare thee well.